Welcome! Thank you so much for joining me on the Socially Delightful podcast. I'm Jewel, human connection enthusiast and your host, and this show is all about delighting in yourself, delighting in socializing and in others, and creating truly supportive, delightful friendships and relationships, even in our modern world with our modern stress. In this podcast, we have fun creating a new culture of living in social delight. Now let's dive into how we're going to do that today.
Oh my goodness. Thank you for joining us, everybody. I have somebody so awesome I'm excited to share with you. His name is Justin Peters. Oh my gosh, why did I say that wrong? Justin Peters? It's not a hard last name. Anyway, Justin is somebody I have met years ago and I have just enjoyed talking to so much and just watching him and his business grow. He is a podcast manager and a host. His podcasting journey started in December of 2019. So after taking a career break, Justin started The Struggle is Real, a podcast for 20 somethings looking to master good money habits. At the time, he didn't realize a sabbatical project would turn into his career until his brother then joined his team. So they paired up together to launch the Simple Pod Studios, a podcast production agency that supports business owners in launching, editing, and managing their podcasts. He continues to support the podcast community through quarterly online meetups, in-person events in Austin. And aside from podcasting, you can just find him rock climbing, running the trails, or watering his plants. Oh my gosh, Justin, thanks for being here.
Joel, it is great to see you. I love that we probably got connected through the world of podcasting back when you were on my show. I don't know, that had to be like 2 or 3 years ago. Yeah. And I didn't even tell you this. That is still like one of my most downloaded backlogged episodes. Like the topic and the title and the content I think was just so on point. That one does well every single year for me. But yeah, I meant to tell you that, but I'm so glad we got connected through the world of podcasting, and now we're like reconnecting through your podcast.
Yeah, so fun. Thank you for telling me that. That is so fun and cool. And we will link that in the show notes. That podcast is so old, but honestly, Justin, I've done, I think in my time, I think I've at over 100 podcast interviews that I've guested on other people's podcasts. And that one is still my favorite. That is truly like that is the one that I have on my website where I'm like, you can listen to me at my favorite episodes here because your questions were so good. The content was so good. It was both like mindset and tips. So anyway, I'm happy you're here. Justin and I are both yappers. We were just talking about it on the way to getting recording. And I have some really great Reddit stories that I want his opinion on. So we're going to be talking about friendship and money today. But I also just want to start with why connection is important. And you have such a great memory, a great moment of connection where you were talking about one of your roommates having a breakup. And I would just think we should all feel the goodness of that. So can you tell us a bit about it?
Yeah, I had a roommate. This was 2020, and we became roommates through a mutual friend. So we didn't really know each other that well. We've hung out a couple of times. We thought each other were cool, but that was about the extent of it. And then our mutual connection was my girlfriend, actually. And she ended up getting a job that made her travel a ton. And we were like trying to kind of get to know each other and warm up as roommates now that it was mostly just the two of us that were always hanging out. But we had this really good breakthrough moment through a breakup. And it was a tough moment for my roommate, but it was kind of cool. I remember I was so awkward when the breakup happened because once again, we didn't really know each other that well. They really like mint chocolate chip ice cream. So I just remember getting like a pint of mint chocolate chip ice cream and putting it in the freezer for them and writing a note on there that said something like, "This really sucks. Like, I hope this can help a little bit." Mm-hmm. And it's so funny. We chat or we talk about that and giggle about that all the time now still. But that was like the impetus and the start of like a really beautiful relationship. And now I kind of forget that we met through my girlfriend because this is somebody that I consider one of my best friends now. And that breakup and me being there and being able to support them through that breakup kind of really jump-started our relationship. We'd have coffee conversations like every morning. they would wander out and I would wander out, and we would just like sip coffee in our living room for like 15, 20 minutes and catch up on what happened from the night. And yeah, it was really cool, and kind of just reminded me as somebody that just crest over 30, that I can still make new friends, and I'm capable of doing that and becoming really close with somebody, and somebody that could eventually turn into a best friend.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, we can never stop making new friends. I love to think about how, like, right now, you and me both, everybody listening, we have not met everybody that we will love and that will love us in our life. Like, how fun is that?
I love
But
that. And it's
isn't that
kind of
cool?
cool to like not even to like look back and see how you met someone. Like I forgot how we met.
Yeah, I
Honestly,
don't
like
remember
I'm
either.
sure somebody introduced us or we found each other through each other's content, but it's so cool that now we're continuing to support each other and be each other's cheerleaders and champion each other like 3 years later. Like it's just really cool. You never know what a interaction with somebody, what might eventually turn into.
Yeah. No, I agree. I agree. And so I think I could just hear some people asking this or questioning this. So for to go from like, okay, we don't really know each other, we just coexist, to having that vulnerable conversation. And it sounds like, you started it with an act of kindness of like getting like mint chocolate chip ice cream. But can you tell us a bit about, if you remember, how you started that vulnerable conversation or how it began and what that was like to cross over, if you will? Because I think sometimes what happens for people listening is that they're like, oh, that sounds really great and I want that, but how?
I'll be honest, Jewel. If I were to like do it over again, it would be a much different approach. I think I was super awkward during the first one, two, maybe even three interactions. Like once again, I just put that mint chocolate chip in there and just kind of let them be for a few days. And especially as roommates, you're kind of crossing paths a little bit, but I just wanted to give them some space. But I just kept showing up. Like I just sit down, I'd let them yap, I'd let them tell me about what's going on. Like I just kind of let it out, and it took multiple attempts and kind of multiple conversations for us to both warm up to each other. But I just never gave up, I don't think. Like I just knew it was important. They needed somebody at the time, and I knew I needed to just step up and be there to listen. And even if I like went back to my room and I was like, eye cover, like, oh my gosh, like, did I ask the right questions, or did I hold space for them the way that they needed to hold space for? Like, I just tried to set that aside and show up for them day after day, how they needed me to be there for them. And yeah, it did blossom into a really awesome relationship.
Beautiful, beautiful. I mean, and it touches on all of the points of what makes a friendship. Like, I hear so often, really in pop culture, like, you just like click with somebody or you don't. That's kind of like reflected in a lot of like memes or like videos. Like, you just meet somebody and but that's not really how friendship works. Like, yes, you can have connection in an instant, and there are certain things that you can do to click with more people, like check out previous podcast episodes. But friendship is built through like consistency and vulnerability and meaningful moments. And like your memory, your moment here that you shared, and thank you for sharing, really just brings that all up and really touches it on it for everybody. So I love that. And I also love too that it was a little awkward because look what it turned into, everybody.
Yeah. And once again, now we just joke about
Yeah,
it.
that's so fun. That's so fun. Well, I have some really awesome Reddit stories for y'all. I mean, isn't Justin just the best, everybody? Like, you guys are going to love his takes. I just know it. So, this one is coming from the Too Hot Takes subreddit, and it's called Am I the Asshole If I Cut My Friend Off for Not Repaying His Debt to Me? So, the story goes, one of my best friends, I'll call him Ben for this story, is a super close friend of mine. We met close to a decade ago in the Army. We've been through a lot together. He's helped me out through some really difficult times many years back after I broke up with my ex. I mean, really, he was there with me, drinking through the night, late night drives, pretty much just what a real bro would do. And years back, he ran into some financial trouble. He had a great job, a nice income, and his mistake came when he signed up for a credit card. To sum it up, about a year later, everything went downhill. No job, huge credit card debt, and he's got a mom with medical condition, bad insurance, so he ended up spending a lot of money on his mom's healthcare. Over the recent year, 2022, he lost his job. He ended up having to borrow money to pay off his credit card bills, house bills, and every bill, really. And I lent him a total of $5,500. He has promised that he will pay me back this sum starting in the month of May of 2023. Come May, he tells me he found a new job and that they will only pay him a rated salary as he joins midway through the month. So he asked for a little more time to start paying me back in June. I told him to pay me back 2 days after every payday, which is the 6th of June, and he hasn't paid me back. So today I texted him about it. He said he's super busy, and about 30 minutes later, he calls me and asks if he could start paying me back in July, as his salary was once again deducted because he requested an advance on last month, and he wouldn't have enough to pay me June's installment. At this point, I'm just livid. Not only has he continuously borrowed money from me, but he hasn't paid a cent. I do feel bad for doubting his reasons, as I know he has to cover his bills, his mom's medical expenses, and etc. However, I know he recently patched things up with his girlfriend, and this has me doubting everything. So they go on to express their frustration, and then they say, I am not in desperate need of getting the money back, but personally I feel like it's still a rather large sum. I'm thinking of telling him to keep the money but never call me again, and would I be the asshole? What do you think, Justin?
Ooh, spicy.
Yeah.
I picked up on a couple of things here. I don't feel like the money is the crux of the issue, especially with the last statement that he just said here, where it's, he didn't need the money. It's no big deal. Pretty much thinking about calling him and just saying, keep the money and never talk to me again. But he had that like one liner about him getting back with his girlfriend that made me think maybe there's another underlying issue there that they haven't necessarily communicated or talked about. So that feels like to me that there might be a little bit of discussion to be had there, or they might need to have some honesty with themselves if the true reason is the payment schedule and that being missed. And if that's the case, then I think there's some things that you can do. I don't think it's personally necessary to go blow up a relationship and honestly like forego $5,500 because somebody missed a payment. And I'm going to put my personal finance cap on right here. And we pretty much always state never lend money to a friend or family member unless you can pretty much think about that as a gift. Like just assume that you're not going to get it back. And if that's okay with you, then go ahead and lend the money. If not, like you might want to go the traditional lending route and actually formalize a payment structure if that's the case. But for me, it doesn't feel like it was that. And if it was, I would still feel like there's plenty of conversation to be had about, hey, I see that you're still having a difficult time. How about we wait until August or September or October to restart the payment structure? Or is there a smaller sum that you can start now just so you can get the habit of repaying? I don't know. For me, it felt like an escalation and he skipped a step or two in the conversation. And I'm still wondering if there's an underlying cause here outside of the money that he's really upset. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I think you're on it. I think that it's really interesting. Like, I'm not in desperately need of the money, and I'm thinking about telling him to keep the money but never call me again. That if you were upset about him not paying you back, like, I agree with you. I think the money is not like the primary reason he is upset here. But I agree with you. It does kind of feel like he just skipped a step. I think some communication would be really helpful here, but I also think, like you said, being really honest with himself on why he is upset and just exploring that, because it also sounds like, as we read the story, that he really explains and empathizes with what his friend is going through right now. And I wonder if it's like a fear or oh no, you might not pay me back and like hurt me later on kind of thing. And so I think communicating and having some discussions on, oh, can we do a smaller payment or can we hold it off until later, is like a great idea. I love what you said, and I actually was thinking about this a lot as I was preparing for the episode that I think when you think of like investing, right? And it depends on the investment, of course, like you would know more than me, but you don't want to invest more than you're willing to lose,
Yeah.
right? And so I think about it, that kind of really applies to loaning money to friends. So, like, if unless you are going to be okay with like losing that money, I don't think it should be lent in the first place. It sounds like this person was okay with that. But for anybody listening, also, notaries are free. You can just go to
Yeah.
most libraries and draft up an agreement. I know people that have actually done that when it comes to loaning money to somebody. And, you know, it's a binding agreement at that point.
I just think this is a very, very difficult situation. And it requires an extreme amount of communication and clarity. Once again, I would draft up, even if I didn't get it notarized or formalized in any way, the specific payment structures, the dates they're going to be paid, maybe even the repercussions if a payment is missed, or um, the system that needs to happen if you're going to miss a payment, because nobody's got to like charge interest to a friend and pretty much bury somebody else into even more debt. But maybe it's, hey, if you're not going to, you're going to pay me on the first of the month starting this date for these months. But if you can't make the payment, then you have to notify me 3 days in advance and let me know. And I'll just shift it to the 15th of the month or whatever that may be. It takes an extreme amount, like I said, of communication and clarity around this. I don't know if I would dabble in lending money unless I A, really trusted someone, B, didn't mind never seeing that money again, and C, it wasn't going to wedge a hole in the middle of our relationship. Because like I said, this one is tough. This one is really tough if it truly comes down to just fairness and, hey, I lent you money on these terms and you're not hitting that. And if you're somebody that gets really upset about the fairness aspect, then I can understand why. Like I'm not advocating, or I'm not saying this dude shouldn't have $5,500 back from his friend. But once again, maybe slow down, have another conversation or two before you blow it up entirely and bury somebody in the keep the money but never talk to me again comment.
Right. Especially like taking it slightly a different turn. You have emotional investment here in this person. And it's part of the reason why we hang on to friendships when they don't serve us. I'm not saying this friendship doesn't serve him. I actually think in a lot of ways it does. He describes in the very beginning of how his friend was very supportive of him and how he just really understands that his friend's going through a rough time right now. But friendship does take investment. It takes an investment of time, of emotional energy. And that's why we can have friendships where maybe we talk, every 4 months and we still feel so close to that person. It's because we have so much of that investment already there. And I think we're really quick in this day and age to cut people off. And I think we could just, sit with our emotions, understand where we're coming from. And like you said, I think these kind of situations involve a lot of communication. So this person really got voted as that they would be the quote unquote the asshole. And it sounded like they agreed with us.
Fair.
Now, it's so funny that you mention charging your friend interest because that is our next story.
Oh no.
Yeah. So it's really short, but I thought it was really interesting because I've never heard of this before. It's also coming from the Two Hot Takes subreddit, and it says, am I the asshole if I ask 25% on the money I lent to my friend that's going through hard times? A friend of mine is going through a tough time. He hasn't had a job in 2 months and is currently looking for a job. His phone got cut off today and he really needs it back up because he's waiting for callbacks. He asked to borrow $200 from me. Would it be cold if I asked him to pay me back with 25% interest? I've already lent him $1,000 and I know he'll pay me back eventually as he's a skilled worker. He's just made some bad business decisions in the last 3 to 4 months, along with his ex-wife taking him to court over child payments. What do you think, Justin?
I vote asshole.
Yeah.
25%. That's egregious.
Yeah.
That's egregious. Um, they might be able to get a better rate out of a credit card company at that point in time.
Right? Literally, someone says, with friends like these, what are credit card companies for?
Exactly.
Oh,
Exactly. Think I personally think if you're lending money to a friend, you should not profit or benefit from that. If you want to put on some stipulation and sure, charge a little bit of interest to have some stake in the game, then take that money and set it aside into another pot and just pay them back, pay it all back to them at the very end of their payment structure. But 25% on this, once again, seems egregious, super unnecessary. I honestly vote this person's being an asshole and kind of profiting from a bad situation that their friend is in.
yeah. Yeah. And I think it kind of comes from, again, that this person said, I already lent him $1,000 and I know he'll pay me back eventually. And it kind of reminds me of the last story a little bit, of like the fear of almost like not getting that money back, or like somehow wanting to establish something. But I just feel like they're not going about it in a way that's actually productive. Like they're not going about handling the situation in a way that's going to increase their trust that they're going
Yes.
to get their money back.
I almost feel like there's a little bit of like a power imbalance too. Like they're charging this 25% knowing that their friend is going to have to say yes. And maybe there's, once again, a little bit of like power and control issue that's happening in this relationship. I don't know. Maybe that's reading in between the lines, but I, once again, if you want to charge interest, fine, like 5% max, but 25% feels like there's something else at play here.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's really insightful. Somebody says, oh yeah, here's the correct comment. With friends like these, who needs a credit card company? Geez, give the guy a break. That's outrageous.
Yeah.
And then someone says 25%. Okay, gangsta. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I have never heard of this before. So it's so funny that you just said, "Oh, you're not charging interest," because I was like, do people do that when they loan money from other people, or like loan money to other people?
I if you're going to start charging interest to, like I said, I think you should just formalize it into a formal loan and call it out. Be a loan shark if that's got to be the case. Then that's not lending money to a friend. That's making money from your money that you're having there, which I think is also perfectly fine. I know many people who are private lenders and they lend to people that they know, either first or second degree connections. But I think 25% is outrageous.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't even see the mafia charging that much, to be honest.
What is there any um, studies or academic conversation that you've read around just lending to friends in general? Put money aside, but I'm thinking you lend a jacket to a friend, or you lend your car so your friend can drive to work or something. Is what conversations or issues come into play whenever you're just lending things in general to friends?
Yeah. I really have not looked into that myself. Normally, what comes up for my people is like reciprocation, like actually constantly. Like,
Yeah.
what if my friends don't reciprocate? Which is kind of arguably the same thing, right? Like, what if my friends don't reciprocate as far as the kindness back to me and lending something? So, I really don't know. It's so interesting to think about, though, and I wonder what it would say. So I'm actually really curious, and we might have to have you back just to talk about it.
Yeah, I understand the reciprocation piece to it. I actually am struggling with a couple, actually one friend in particular right now that I feel like there's been a little bit of an imbalance in reciprocation. The friend that ask for like everything and they're not bashful to, hey, can you drop me off at the airport, or can you come pick me up, or can I come have dinner with you? It's just like almost overextension in the reciprocation. And if you're a pushover, or like you don't want to say no to a friend, I find that a really hard situation to be in, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah. No, thank you for sharing that. Do you care if I ask how you're approaching that so far?
um Honestly, Joel, you will tar and feather me for this, but I still haven't had the conversation with this friend yet that I feel like there's a little bit of imbalance. I don't know the right way to approach the situation yet. But I am feeling myself almost um, trying to avoid this friend. Like they call and I kind of know they're calling to ask or request something. So I might only pick up if it's really convenient for me or I'm in a mood where I feel okay being able to say yes to something right there on the spot.
Yeah. Yeah. And it makes a lot of sense. It's uncomfortable, and I think just knowing what I know about you, you are such a kind and giving person. I mean, we were just talking about that before we hit record about like the amazing things that you do for your clients. Uh, and you're right. I am going to tar and feather you. I'm just kidding. Right here on this podcast, communicate. But I think what is helpful and something that we talk about a lot here on this podcast that that not that you asked for advice, but if it I don't know, feels good to hear, I guess. I don't know. Do you want to hear advice?
I do actually.
Okay.
I get free advice from Joel if I just say yes to come on the
Yeah.
podcast.
I love it. Then I really appreciate you bringing it up too, because I'm thinking as well, like we've had podcasts about reciprocation, but to say it really like succinctly, I think would be really helpful for everybody to hear. So this is my kind of my thought process too. So thank you. Um, when it comes to situations like that, and I've had friends like that, I think everybody has kind of had a friend like that at some point. Now, I do want to start by saying that they're not as common as we think they are. And there's data that supports that. Like these takers aren't as common as we think they are. We really just want people to love us the way that we love, and that's where a lot of mix and match or mismatch happens. Um, but I think when it comes to having a conversation with a friend, like one thing that I think is also your strength that you can really use as somebody who is empathetic and like sensitive with your communication is to lead the conversation with the intention of connection. So, and that can be like just starting with like reaffirming the friendship, like, hey, I really appreciate like all of these years that we've had together. And I love how you have supported me with this. And I love how much fun we have together. And I want to keep being close. And so I want to talk to you about something that is bothering me. So if you frame something with the intention of connection, it really just showcases to that other person that this is a safe conversation. It helps them not be on the defensive, and it can really help build trust. It can be such a vulnerable moment. Now, what happens for a lot of people is they get really scared to do that, or they think, oh, I don't know how this friend would respond. And that's fair, and that's nerve-wracking, y'all. And part of that is just, we got to feel some nerves, and that's okay. When it comes to somebody not responding positively, I think then you know who to invest in besides that. Now, sometimes, depending on the situation, it takes like a couple conversations to really be on the same page and like giving somebody space. This isn't like the exact formula, if you will, for how to communicate with somebody. But when it comes to those moments where we are leading with connection, we're talking to people about how we feel so we can have a better relationship with them, because truthfully, it's you're not having like the best relationship with this friend right now in your experience, right? So you have a better experience and then they have a better experience as a result of you having a better experience in the friendship. If they don't respond in a way that is also caring and compassionate and reflects that they value the friendship back to you, then you know. Then you know. And this is why we prioritize multiple people in our lives, so that way we can have other people to lean on. What do you think? What would you shift about that, or what sticks out to you about that?
I think I agree with all of that. I like the approach. And at the end of the day, I think it just comes down to having the tough conversation or the hard conversation. I don't even know if you have to frame it that way. It's sure it could be challenging and nerve-wracking and scary, but once again, if you're going in with good intentions and you're not trying to cut someone off, and you also assume your friend is not being a taker intentionally, but maybe just being unaware of it, it's only going to be the start of probably a resurgence of a really awesome friendship.
Yeah. Yeah. I have a friend who years ago was really preoccupied with themselves and was that friend. They were like, can you drop everything and come pick me up? Can you, like listen to me, cry on the phone for an hour, at least once or twice a week. like it was all of these things. And I, at the time, this was years and years ago, didn't know to lead with connection. So I definitely was really nervous and almost like really passive and like, hey, I don't want to bother you, but this I'm feeling a little bit. So I didn't make it very clear,
Yeah.
to be fair. But this friend and I are still really close to this day. And they really heard me out. Luckily, as well, there was somebody else in their life who kind of said the same thing and was like, hey, boo, this is kind of a lot. And I recently just spent a weekend with this friend. I went and visited them, and they brought it up and they were like, hey, remember that one time when you put up with me when I was like so preoccupied and like so in myself because of what I had going on? Like, thanks for dealing with me.
Yes.
So
It's almost the spinach in the teeth situation. Like, nobody wants to call it out, but the person that does, you're always super appreciative of it. You're like, oh my gosh, I've just been embarrassing myself in front of tons of people and nobody said anything. And the fact that you told me that may have been a little awkward or uncomfortable whenever you first said it, but I really appreciated it because you avoided me a ton of awkward embarrassment over the course of the rest of the night. So I'm kind of looking at it that exact same way. And this is a friend that means a lot to me that I know would probably receive this if I said it in a encouraging and positive way, would receive it really well and would probably change their actions.
yeah, yeah. And it can feel so good, right? Like it can be such a like liberating experience to like recognize that and then to go talk to them about it. It can feel so good and like close after. Thank you for bringing that up. I was like, do you want advice on that? Because I was like on the podcast, like normally.
Yeah, you get to do some like live
Yeah.
coaching.
That was, thank you for bringing that up and for sharing that, Justin. Like I've never had anybody do that. I really, really appreciate it. I'm sure everybody else really appreciate that too. So thank you. Okay, so I have another story for you as well. And this is about somebody that is not paying somebody back. So it's also coming from the Two Hot Takes subreddit. They have the best stories. So it says, my friend isn't paying me back on a large purchase, and she isn't giving me a straight answer to when she will start. What do I do? So throwaway count just in case. I am trying to be vague because the thought of somebody, oh yeah, they just are nervous about somebody recognizing the story. But they say, one of my best friends, we'll call her S, and I made plans several months ago to attend a big event in March. I put down the money to make sure that we would have the same experience / not get separated, with the understanding that S would pay me back. I was absolutely fine with this agreement. When we were discussing how S would pay me back, she said that she would have to wait a few months to come into some money. To explain, we're both in college and S gets refund checks from our university. Excuse me. Some of that money has to go to other things, but I was under the impression that the remaining money, or even some of it, would come back to me as we agreed on it several months ago. Some more information. I grew up with much more than S did. The money I used to pay for the tickets was all mine. I worked for that money last summer, and I didn't start receiving any allowance or financial help from my parents until college, when I didn't have a car to get to work off campus. Otherwise, almost everything I got was paid for with my own money. That being said, I am not delusional enough to not recognize that I am still much more privileged than S. My parents can support me in college. And if something was wrong with my car, I could get help if I needed it. S doesn't really have that. She often describes herself as poor. My worth ethic doesn't negate at all that my parents have offered and continue to offer me what S's parents don't have. The other day, I reached out to S to ask about the refund check. She said it would come in a few weeks, but that some other things had to be paid for first. I expected this. Then S expressed that she had other trips planned and that she has some debt concerns and is overall worried about not being able to go to the concert. I reassured her that she could pay me back in small chunks and even after the concert if that's what she needs, but I just wanted to have any kind of plan in place so we were on the same page. S said that she would love to go, but she doesn't think she would be able to do it. Again, I reassured her that we could do it in small amounts. If it were a smaller thing than just going out to dinner, for example, I wouldn't be as much of a stickler on it. But what we are doing is big, and I bought the tickets with the understanding that I would be paid back. Eventually, I asked for clarification. Can she go or not? Because I would hate to offer her ticket to someone else if it turned out she could go. I don't know what to do. I would love to go and spend the weekend with her. We originally made the plans together. I would never just withhold her ticket. I just want to have an understanding and maybe see some of the money before we go. I also don't want to hurt her feelings by asking outright if she's willing to give up her ticket and assertively putting my foot down. I don't want to ruin this friendship. What do I do?
Ooh. What stuck out to you on this story? Were there any like chunks that you kind of want to underline and talk about?
You're such a gracious co-host.
I'm sorry, it's 5 years of podcasting.
Yeah.
I can't help it.
You're so good. Okay. The thing that stuck out to me, and I try to skim these. I don't want to know ahead of time. What stuck out to me was that it sounds like the friend was basically saying, hey, I don't want to go anymore, or I can't go anymore. And this person was like, no, you can pay me back in small chunks. What stuck out to you?
Definitely that piece. I feel like there's a misunderstanding. I'm guessing S is not being clear and direct in the fact that, hey, I know we initially agreed to this, but I really can't pay for this anymore. And therefore I really don't want to go. I don't want to be in debt to you. And S's friend, the writer of this story, probably doesn't want to go with another person. And she's battling or struggling with that issue right now. There just seems to be a disagreement. And it's funny that she called out, I don't know if I want to ask S directly if she's going or not, because I don't want to hurt her feelings. I almost feel like that's what needs to happen in order to really get clarity on can you go or not? And not even can you go or not, but I know you're in a tough financial situation right now. And I know we agreed to going to this concert together 3 months ago, whenever you maybe weren't in the same situation. I definitely want to go with you. And I'm happy to chunk these payments into an extended period so that you can have this, but I can still get paid back. But I also realize you might be prioritizing other financial commitments right now. What do you want to do? And toss it back into her court and allow her the option to say yes or no either way, but you're giving her an out either direction, I think.
Yeah. No, I couldn't have said it better myself. I really think this person, like you said, is trying to go with us to this thing, whatever it is. And it sounds like maybe the gun was jumped a little bit on purchasing these tickets or whatever it is. And we don't really have a lot of information on that, because I can understand why it would be upsetting to be like, no, yeah, I can go to that with you, and be like, okay, so I'm going to buy the tickets, right? And then the person then later on to be stuck with selling that. I know actually this kind of not exactly the situation by any means. There was a bit more communication involved, but I had a friend and we bought Taylor Swift tickets, and then y'all know those go for a pretty penny, am I right? So
I almost thought this story was written in the context of a Taylor Swift concert.
It kind of sounds like it.
Yeah, I'm I think writer and S were going to Taylor Swift and forked out a fair amount of money here.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's what I was thinking the entire time.
Oh my gosh. No, I think you're right. Because also, that being said, if it was Taylor Swift, like how it was for me, I knew that none of my friends would be willing to spend that much to go.
Yes.
Right? Like I know that like they uh just aren't as passionate about Taylor Swift as I am. So, and because it is again quite a pretty penny
It's a
to
lot.
spend on that. Uh but this friend ended up telling me, and granted, I will say this was like a year ago because the concert's up and coming, but when we decided a year ago, she was like, "Yes, I'm in. Let's do it." And then a couple months after, and this is a year before the concert, so like 10 months before the concert, my friend was like, "Hey, actually, I don't want to go anymore." And I was like, "All right, well, can you help me find somebody to sell these tickets?" And we ended up getting them sold and everything was fine. And this friend also like split the difference with me as far as like we like the fees go, because
Hmm.
there are like processing fees and stuff along with that. But we don't have a lot of information on that, but I can see why that would be upsetting. And I think with all of these situations, just honestly, Justin, I'm so grateful again that you brought up and shared what you did, because I think in all of these situations, money is such a delicate thing. It's such a vulnerable thing for so many of us to talk about. And I think leading with connection is so helpful here, and leading with empathy for the other person. But I think money and lending money or paying for things, like anything involving any other kind of relationship, I think needs to be done with a lot of communication. And so I will say as well, one thing that I realized with all of the projects and things that I had going on this year, that I also probably shouldn't have just bought those Taylor Swift tickets myself, because I was not in a place to communicate a lot about such a big purchase as well. And luckily my friend was great, but yeah, I think that's something for everybody to consider, is like, if something isn't ideal with this, are you willing to have a bunch of conversations about it?
Yeah, I totally agree here. And I think the writer's in a tough situation right now. I do feel like S probably can't financially commit to the ticket. I think they probably know that, but they're kind of in a stare down on like who will call it out first
Yeah.
and like approach the situation first. I I think a really good thought process for the writer might just be deciding, do I want to go with S to this concert or not? Like, is that a make or break for me? And if you really want to go to let's call it the Taylor Swift concert with your friend S, because you guys have so many memories jamming to Taylor Swift in the car, and you know she would be an amazing seatmate and you guys would rock out all night, the writer maybe should consider just paying for both tickets if S really can't. I think that's going to take a lot of understanding and honestly conversation with herself on knowing I can't hold this over S's head if I do decide to make that decision. And after this has been said and done, like we move on and we have an amazing time at the Taylor Swift
Yeah.
concert, because she would be the best person. But if you want the money, you can't afford both tickets and you need to either sell the ticket or find another friend that might go. I think that's fair, but I think that should be the writer's decision then too.
I love that. I love that you said that. That's so helpful and such another beautiful option, because and I just think that opens people's minds, because I think, at least for me, where I was at was like, okay, if you're making a large purchase with a friend, like you need to get paid back. But
Yes.
if you don't want to and you just would really rather go and like have that time together at the Taylor Swift concert, uh yeah, so good. So
Yeah.
good. So Justin, your podcast is all about money. I appreciate you so much. I feel like this really showed me how much money is about communication, because it's so funny actually, because I today is actually my budgeting day, so that's something I'll be doing later. And one thing my partner and I joke a lot about is like, uh money takes a lot of being honest with yourself over and
Yes.
over and over again. And, you know, those weekly money dates I have, I got to get real all the time.
Yes.
So I'm actually really curious. I have a couple questions for you about money and friendship, but how did you get into this space to begin with?
I think I've always been interested in personal finance. I was blessed and fortunate to have um, my dad as somebody that really coached and parented me through my teenage years and made me super financially responsible. Like I hated it at the moment. Like
Yeah.
he was the parent that like, oh, you're gonna buy a car. Well, then I just want to remind you that there's insurance and there's gas and there's maintenance and you're paying for all of those things. And I like hated it so much. I remember like multiple times being like, you're the only parent that makes their kid pay for their cell phone bill. But it was really cool and awesome. You know, by the time I got to be a young adult, like I'd been paying for these things. I did my personal property taxes every year. I did my taxes every year. I paid these bills. I would be the one that called if there was a fee on my account. He just like kind of forced me into a lot of the life skills around personal finance. And I started to recognize that some of my friends, whenever I was in my 20s, didn't necessarily get the privilege of learning those skills from their parents. So I wanted to help educate in that space. And I became a go to factor for a lot of friends, just being like, I have to pick my 401k investments. Can you please sit down and help me with that? Or like, can I borrow your spreadsheet that you use for budgeting? And I just loved that so much that I decided to create content around it.
So cool. I love that. And I love that you were doing it because I know I have like said this throughout the episode, but I just knowing you and interacting with you, you were such an empathetic and just like kind, willing to help person. And I think as well, what happens with money is that there's also a lot of shame that can be involved in it. And it takes like, in order to be comfortable and to be vulnerable with somebody about money, um, it it takes like I think really like a safe space as well.
There's a lot of transaction that comes with money, of course, but at the end of the day, there's really a lot of emotion tied around money as well. And I find that really fascinating and interesting. And I'm so glad I'm the friend that a lot of people can come to and be super honest and upfront about. Like it's a privilege that that I've created spaces for people and they've been able to be like, all right, Justin, I'm just going to get straight down to it. Like, this is my credit card debt. This is all the numbers. This is what I'm struggling with. Can you help me? Or like, hey, Justin, I got a job offer. This is the amount of money. What do you think? Will you help me negotiate? Like it takes a lot of vulnerability for you to share things like how much money that you make or how much debt you're in or how much you're trying to save to spend on your wedding, like random things like that people don't want to be vocal about. It's been awesome that I've been a part of those conversations and allowed into that space. So we can also get tactical and like sort some of this stuff out too.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's been a really, really fun place to be in.
Yeah, I love that. Oh, and again, I think you were such a good person for it. I Yeah, I know you said you're grateful for the safe spaces. I'm just grateful that you've created those safe spaces for people.
Jewel, you're just gassing me up this
You
entire
know,
episode. I really like it.
just pumping it up, but it's true. It's so true. And so I have a question for you, and that is like, should we be friends with people that don't make good money decisions? And I was really curious on your take with this because I've seen a couple of things, not like a good Reddit story, but a couple people making comments. So I want to know your thoughts.
I honestly think, especially close friends, that money should be discussed and you should probably have a good sense or feeling on, is this friend responsible or not with money? Because at the end of the day, if they're not, it might lead to stories like we shared in all three of the examples today. And I think that might help you prevent an issue down the road and not commit to something. Like, there are many of friends that were buying the Taylor Swift concert tickets. They can't pay it for it right now, but they're going to be able to pay for it next month. I trust them. I put it on my card and I know it's got to get paid. There might be some other friends where I might rethink that situation a little bit, and I might just say, hey, let's wait the month until you get paid, and then let's buy them together. Like it just helps me set boundaries, kind of knowing or understanding the responsibility of somebody's money habits. So I personally probably do factor that in a fair amount. But as I get older, I'm also trying to let go of some of the money scarcity mindset that comes with somebody that grew up with a frugal mindset and is somebody that is very responsible and dependent on themselves whenever it comes to money. And the Taylor Swift concert one, my 20-year-old self would have been like, this is a disaster and a nightmare. But my 30-year-old self now is like, you know what, like, you've been my best friend for many of years. I know we're going to have so much fun. If you can pay me back for the ticket, great. If not, don't worry about it. I still want to bring you.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And I think that's such a good answer because one thing that I've been thinking about recently, and honestly, not to get political, but as the time we're recording this, the election just happened. And I realized I was like, oh, I'm like angry at some of my friends for how they voted. And what I did and what I've been like advising, I guess, other people to do, not that I have it all figured out, but I really took a step back from some of those friends, but I have what I like to call like a life council. And on my life council, I have people that are really active in civic duty that have very similar views as me. And I really leaned into those friendships for support and then like decided for me, and I think it's such a, there's no right or wrong, it's such a spectrum. And for me, the other people on my life council that maybe didn't vote the way I did provide so much more for me in other areas. Like they give, that friendship gives me so much value. And I was just like, yeah, no, I want to continue to be friends with this person and, maybe even continue to have conversations. I think a lot of times, especially when we're so divisive, we think that we can't have disagreements or different ways of doing things with people in our lives. And we absolutely can. And fun fact, y'all, like if you're a parent and you're having a bunch of disagreements with your partner or like, good conversations, disagreements, like discussing something, that actually is like what really helps create your children's like creativity. Is that interesting? Like if you have conflict in the home, and granted there's probably a spectrum with that, but like if you have healthy conflict in a home, like that allows your children to then think of things differently and to hold two different views and think critically. So anyway, I think it's good for all of us to be able to think critically and have different people in our lives, but I think it kind of reminds me of that. My answer to this and hearing what you said is, yeah, I want people on my life council that do make good financial decisions and even people that I can learn from, right? Because I have friends that are, more educated on things politically, more educated on things civically than I am. And I love learning from them. And I would want that, right? As I'm thinking, if I'm going to have people that, maybe provide me so many other moments of joy and support, and, the things that we do together are I call them like couch friends, where we just like can sit on the couch and like joke around and share. We're so comfortable with each other. I don't want to like cut that person off, but I do think it's helpful for everybody, especially right now, to think about, okay, who's on my life council? And I don't mean right now politically. I mean right now also like economically. I was doing some research before our podcast episode today, and I am astounded by how many people are in debt and how much like debt the average American is. Like just like credit card debt too. Blew me away of how
It's
many
something
people.
crazy. Like I've seen as low as like 20% all the way up to like 45% of people have credit card debt.
Yeah.
So as much as it's a taboo topic, it is a very normal situation that a lot of people are in. Like look around, and 1 out of 2, 1 out of 3 people that you're friends with are probably in credit card debt right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, yeah. So I think that this is also something that we can continue to talk more about and talk with our friends. One idea, y'all, like feel free to steal it, that my friends and I are doing was we all took something um like I took stocks and my friends took other things. I can't exactly remember. It's up and coming, so I guess I'll re-find out. But we are going to like teach people like how to like teach our friends like doing like a PowerPoint slide of like, okay, this is how to like invested in stocks, right? So that's
Cool.
what mine is. Yeah, and I think it's so fun, and like just like the girls and I are doing it, and I think we can have more conversations like this and talk about it with our people.
Yeah, I
Justin,
guess I
yeah,
guess it
go
kind of
ahead.
comes down to like what you mean by financially irresponsible or like money.
Mm,
Like there is um not understanding because you've never gotten exposed to money or personal finance, and then there is just like blatantly choosing to be bad with money. And I think once again, it kind of comes down to some of that, and some of that might be value, the values that friends have. And once again, I think it's kind of setting boundaries where you feel like boundaries need to be set. But it can be such a beautiful experience to also be somebody that is a little bit more responsible with money and help a friend get there too, and or learn from somebody that's a little further along than you. I've never bought a house before, and you bet your bottom I'm going to call a friend that has bought a house before to learn and understand the home buying process whenever that time comes, and I hope they would reciprocate and not like gatekeep this information. So that would be a good friend versus a bad friend, and me not understanding the home buying process doesn't make me irresponsible with my money. So yeah, I think there's a lot of nuance in the question, but it's a fascinating one to think through.
yeah, definitely. Thank you so much. I have one more question for you if you have the time.
I thought you were about to close things down,
I
and then I
was,
extended, and now you're gonna ask another
and now
question.
and now I have another one. So yeah, I just won't let you get off this damn mic. But my other question to you is, especially talking about that and talking about how many people are in credit card debt, what do you wish people knew about money?
I think the big thing that comes to money as a tool. Money has a lot of emotion wrapped up into it, but at the end of the day, if you could set that aside and recognize it's a transfer of value, and sometimes an ends to a means, like there's so much opportunity in that. And honestly, I'm having a lot of conversation in the space that I'm at with a lot of people that you like many people would probably view as financially successful, but that's only one facet of their life. And now we're talking about, cool, we have enough money to support ourselves in whatever magnitude that we want right now, but that doesn't mean you're you're built for happiness at that point in
Mm,
time, or your life is amazing. Like there's still a lot of hard work to do after that. So I love teaching and talking about money because I think it unlocks a lot of opportunity for people. I am so sad on when I hear stories about people that are stuck in jobs that they absolutely hate, but they can't leave because they're paycheck to paycheck. Like that breaks my heart. And if I could help everybody become financially independent and have enough money that money falls down the ladder of factors whenever it comes to how you're spending your professional time. And if everybody could go and pursue the things that they want to pursue without money being a factor in it, like how much better would this world be? How much art and creativity and helpfulness and guidance would we create by allowing people to really step into what they really want to do and not step into having to spend their time creating or generating money? Like that gets me really excited. Everything outside of money for that purpose, it doesn't matter to me. I don't need to amount or amass a huge pile of money just to say that I'm rich.
mm,
Really, richness for me is freedom and optionality with my time.
yeah, so good. Couldn't have said it better myself. Really, really. I have actually never really talked about this in content before, but I grew up in a very affluent era. Oh my gosh, in a very affluent area, and my family did really well growing up, and it's something that I like. None of my friends ever were in that same situation, And anyway, I bring it up now because I think one of the reasons why to a lot of my friends, didn't appear like I had money, because I didn't, like my family had money, correction. Because I didn't like wear the name brand things or like, do fancy things. I don't know. I just didn't really like prioritize that. I think part of the reason why some of them were like shocked to find out later that my family was like well off is because I realized that so many people around me were still so miserable and honestly still so lonely.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay. that is not the end all be all. Definitely not so. So I honestly think too that was part of why I got into what I do and like advocating for connection so much, is because I really saw like pretty much all of my life that that is not what makes you happy. Justin, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you.
This was an awesome conversation. I'm glad we full circled moment and I got to guest on your podcast.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, years later. But by the way, tell everybody where they can find you and they can listen to your podcast because it's so good.
Yeah, wherever you're listening to podcasts right now, you can find The Struggle is Real. We have a lot of awesome content around financial independence and personal finance. Actually, I just had a really good conversation with a financial therapist about what to do when she makes more than you. It came two guys really talking about the insecurity around not being the breadwinner in their family, and still wanting to be super supportive of their spouses and their partners, but at the same time recognizing that society has not caught up to some of that, and the check when they're at the restaurant gets laid in front of them and not their spouse, or they're at the playground with their friends' wives and not with their friends because everybody's at work. It was a really interesting conversation, might dovetail pretty well with the conversation that we had today, if you kind of like this friend or money or emotional side to all of the conversation that we're having.
Yeah. Is that out already?
It's out already.
Okay.
It was Ed Combs. Give me 1 second. I can tell you the number here.
That's so good. I'm also going to put it in the show notes for everybody. I'm going to go listen to that. That's so good.
Yeah. So Ed Combs, episode 151 on the podcast.
Awesome. And that'll be in the show notes, everybody, if you want to go pop over there and check it out. But thank you all for listening and tuning in. And again, Justin, thank you so much for being here. Oh, wait, I also want to shout out your production company. Can you tell people where they can find that?
simplepodstudios.com. If you're thinking about launching a podcast, or you have a podcast and you need help or support editing and managing your podcast, I'd love to have a conversation. Or if you're just a podcaster and you want to continue to get better at podcasting, I got tons of free resources and I love meeting other podcasters. So feel free to send me a message over there.
Beautiful. Okay, now no more fake outs. That was the last question. Justin, thank you so much.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for joining me on the Socially Delightful podcast. I'm Jewel, and I'm truly so grateful that you came and hung out with me today. If this podcast meant something to you, it would mean so much to me if you left me a review so that way I could keep making content that you love. And if you really want to make my whole day, share this podcast to your Instagram story and tag me at Connection with Jewel so I can shout you out. Or send me a message and let me know what resonated with you or what you want to hear next. And I'll see you at the next episode.